Farming is one of Northern Ireland's oldest and biggest industries. It's a cornerstone of the economy. Every year our farmers follow a cycle of growing, breeding, fattening and harvesting. The food is eaten throughout the UK, Ireland and further afield. It's a seasonal business, governed by the weather and market forces. But in 2020, our farmers, along with the rest of us, faced a year like no other. It's January, and near Gorchin in Tyrone, Kenny and Janice Preston farm with their daughters Zara and Leah. They keep Beltex and Blue Leicester sheep and British Blue and Angus cattle. This month, they have their hands full with their pedigree flock. With lambing just a few weeks away, Kenny and 17-year-old Zara are busy preparing the barn.
So we're just setting up pens for lambing time, and we're setting them up 6 foot by 4 foot. Gives them enough room. My flock's are a hen Beltex and we got about 20 in it, so we're building it up. I just always preferred the Beltex. The Blue Leicester's more like feisty to me, and Beltex can be feisty, but they're just a nicer breed. Last year I went to Greenmount to do floristry, so this year I'm working full-time basically and in a florist, and then I'm going to go back next year and do my level 3. I knew at 5th year I didn't want to go back to school, so I went and done floristry. You really have to deal with customers, you have to make up the orders, and then you have to know all the names of the flowers. So at Greenmount we learnt them in English and Latin, so there's a bit of Latin in it as well.
The calm before the storm now, like. February, we'll have this batch of 75. Then we'll start again roughly about the 12th of March. And that'll take us through nearly to May. Because this year, for the first year in a few years, we took a few ewe lambs just to get numbers up again. And generally it'll be a marathon then. The embryos and the pedigree ones, because they're AI'd in one day, that's more the sprint. Then when you get on to the commercials, it's more the marathon.
This here's just to stop any diseases and any infections getting out when the sheep lamb, so it just prevents all that there.
If it's not clean, it's not right, so plenty of bedding and clean every pen out. There's each ewe or pair of lambs or single lambs out of them pens, all have to be cleaned and disinfected again. I've seen it before, I've heard of other ones, and they get a problem with disease. And it can cost you a fortune. There's too much money involved in embryo work and AIing and pedigree stock to not do it right.
Near Glynn, overlooking Larne Loch, scientist and farmer Johnny Hansen runs Jubilee Farm. It's worked and funded by a group of like-minded people with a passion for growing and producing their own food.
Up in here is our market garden, so it's really the only flat field in the farm, and it's the one that we've used, or half of it actually, for vegetables, which we've had over the course of the year, with pigs in half of it and then geese around the corner. But primarily it's been for the growing of all different sorts of vegetables for our veg box scheme, which is just coming to an end now at the end of January. This is Daisy, the large black. And Daisy is due to have her second litter at the end of the month. She had 6 piglets in her last litter. Pigs often have a smaller litter the first time round. It's a year ago this week that we moved into Jubilee Farm, and it also marks my first anniversary being a farmer and moving from wanting to do it for 31 years through to actually doing it. So it's been a busy year, lots of ups as well as downs. Lots of challenges, but when you consider a year ago that this farm and this field was just a greenfield site and it just used for winter grazing and a few cuts of silage, it's really been transformed into a flourishing space. So everything is very wet. I feel a bit like Shrek in the swamp at times, wandering around up to my knees in mud and other liquids. And I suppose one of the sobering things is that the climate change projections for Northern Ireland are that because warmer air carries more moisture, that winters may get wetter, and just generally the climate may get wetter in parts of Ireland. So it's quite sobering about how farming and this farm, but farming in general, will adapt to those sort of environments and conditions. I grew up partly spending time on farms with my extended family, but I also then spent quite a lot of time at university, spending my summers working in wildlife parks and animal collections and zoos. So instead of mucking out pigs, I was mucking out rhinos and giraffes and tigers and jaguars and all sorts of things. Remarkably similar though in terms of approaches. Good training for parenting too, because in all three cases you shovel it in at one end, you shovel it out at the other end, and you try not to lose your life or sanity in the process. These are Gloucester Roll spots. They're the original apple orchard pig, and legend has it that the spots come from the apples in the orchards of the West Country in England, and the apples fell and bruised the original Gloucester Roll spot, and the bruise became the spot in the breed that we know so well, popularised by Dick King-Smith among others. They're a nice breed and have lovely meat, and we try to feed them the odd apple too whenever we can get our hands on it. So we're just going to let our pair of geese out. We have a pair of American buff geese. We got them as juveniles in May, and then they'll start breeding in the spring and have their first goslings, and which will be ready for Christmas 2020. We had to clip their wings last week. Actually, they were flying into various neighbouring fields. They're called the Jenkinses, after Robin and Nathan, after a pair of American interns that we had. These are Anglo-Nubians. They're just on grass and browse on hedges, but occasionally if we need to do any work with them or anything, we'll give them a little bit of meal just to keep them friendly. They're very food orientated. So they're a dual purpose breed. At the moment we're keeping them for meat, so a bit like with the pig club, people sign up for a half goat. So the 4 kids have 8 owners who'll each get a half goat later in the year whenever we finish them. And then in due course, once we have a barn, we hope to milk them as well. Their milk is really high in butterfat, so it's good for making cheese, a bit like milk from Jersey cows.
Johnny hopes more people can get involved in this style of farming.
It's not only a year anniversary of us living on this farm, but of me being a farmer, and it has been a steep learning curve. There is a lot to learn, and I have quite a number of more experienced farmers on speed dial, and their experience built up over a lifetime is invaluable for someone like me who's starting out and yes, has read the books and yes, has worked on farms and things, but has a lot to learn. And to improve our animal health and care, we've actually just had a volunteer veterinary advisor join us, and she's going to be working on developing an animal health plan for the farm as a whole, so that we proactively manage both chronic and then any acute issues that come up over the course of the year. So there's always room for improvement.
Near Randallstown in Antrim, James Alexander and his family farm several hundred acres producing sheep and cattle. January is a key month. He's AIing 320 heifers. His plan is to sell the in-calf cows later in the year to other farmers. But first, they all need to get pregnant.
The big days are the best days. It kind of gives you something to work towards, and it's nice having the scale to have this all going on. Like that yard of heifers and every pen steaming and every pen looking well. It's a lovely sight to see.
The day gets off to a really bad start. A heifer has broken her leg while jumping in the pen. It's a harsh reality of farming.
There'd be 10 heifers in the yard I would have picked to be keeping, and that was one of them. She cost me £1,400. She said it worth about $200 someday. And for her to be standing there with her leg breaking and pain, it's just it's not pleasant to see. But then there's 318 heifers standing waiting on us, and we can't dwell over it too long. That happened. That's somebody's fault. They're all in the gallery, like, you can't have 320 individual pens. Things go wrong in farming. I wish it was a lesser one, a less valuable one, and one that I wasn't fond of, but it wasn't, so nothing else I can do.
Unfortunately, the break can't be fixed, so the animal has to be put down. Today's work is a big investment for James. The semen is from top bulls.
I tried to not do anything too wrong. I always give it plenty of thought. Like this job here, what did I count up earlier on? It's going to cost us about 13,000 today spent to try and get these heifers predded and a bit of meal fed and a mineral dose and all. Aye, it's a lot of investment, but I have no doubt myself is the way forward. So I just want to try and continue to grow what we have to, I don't make it bigger or better. Don't necessarily want to make it any bigger, but just try and keep it going and keep it where it should be.
It's also a large number of cows to inseminate. For AI technician Chris Johnson, it's one of the biggest batches that he's done.
Your average amount would be maybe 20 to 30, but no, that's here. We done it last year for James, but would seem to have quite a good hit in around 73% James. So it takes the pressure of James, especially when you have to use easy calving bulls. And whenever these are proven sires, it's a big help.
This pen here is going to 2 different bulls, some the EBY and some the Aver. So I'm just writing down the ones that are going to which bull, you know. And I've an app on the phone, and I can look up that number and see, just to make sure it's right animal, you know, because she the heifers have same or very similar numbers. So the shapely heifers are getting EBY, and the less shapely heifers are getting Aver.
This work can be a logistical nightmare. The only way it can go successfully is for James to have good herdsmen. Jack Smith has his own farm 50 miles away in Tyrone, but he's also started working for James.
Well, whenever you're breeding and footering about with stock at home, you're like it is interesting work to be at, so it is. So, no, definitely. You could bet worse things, I think. And the crack's good and a good bit of company, sure. A bit of slagging and joking, sure. There's something different.
Near Ballygolly in Tyrone, January 2020 starts with unexpected early arrivals for accountant and farmer Des Kelly. 6 new lambs.
One of the ram lambs must have been left in too long and got to the ewes before the rams did. So these are ahead of the plan. But they're grand, they're healthy, they're good. A bit of a surprise. Actually, New Year's Day, I think, was the first of them. When I went out to see and I went, oh God, wasn't planned. But anyway, oh, look at the wee boy in the middle of the ring feeder looking for his feed. So he's as happy as Larry, and they're all thriving away like mad. Well, we're just outside Ballygolly in the parish of Killeashel, so South Tyrone, really. Farming operation is very mixed. It's a combination of pedigree Herefords, commercial sheep, and also poultry. That's the whole piece. Herefords came on the farm maybe 16, 18 years ago. Working off farm, we wanted something that could look after themselves, easy managed, temperament, right sort, and were able to look after themselves. And it was always going to be native, so it could have been Angus, could have been Hereford, but the Hereford caught my eye always. Just as always there, it's my father farmed, my uncle's farmed, it was what you kind of brought up with, so it was nice. It's nice to do it. You know, when I was out of farming for a while, when I was working and early on until I got a bit of ground, and then kind of went on from there, back into it. It never goes away, I don't think. I think you'll find everybody just the same. And I have to rely on help on farm, like, because I'm not here day in, day out. I'm only here mornings and here evenings, so it doesn't work every day to be here. You have to have cover, you can't do it without it. And I've been very fortunate to have cover, so lucky that way. But people wonder why you be up in the morning and doing things before you go to work, or why you're going out in the evening whenever you come home. But if it clears the head and keeps a balance in your life, then I think it's not a bit of harm. People would question and say you're mad, but it takes all sorts to make a world. So. At the minute here, Rodrigo's the main man. He's a Brazilian fella living here for a few years, you know, and he's come from a farming background in Brazil. He's got a real good understanding of livestock, all sorts actually of livestock, and great eye for detail in terms of spotting if there's something wrong. Has good technique in managing. He's not wild or rough, and he's first class.
Des has a large herd of pedigree Herefords, but his accountant's head has spotted the chance to venture into fattening dairy cross beef calves.
but they're coming off 2 British Friesian dairy farms really, where they're using a Hereford bull primarily, and you're getting a good calf with a bit more substance in them, I suppose, really, than the pure Holstein.
To cope with the increased number of animals to feed, Des has invested in machinery to lighten the workload. He and Rodrigo are getting used to the new kit.
Well, really what we're doing is trying to mix up our own ration for the calves, so they're on a sort of a straw, barley, maize mix just to bring them through, and a bit of soy in it. So what we're doing here is it's basically a computer on the mixer, and it weighs everything that you put in. Now you actually can program in your own diets and get it to sort of tell you, right, that's enough of that, what your mixing time is, all of that. Now we're not working at that level yet, but we will be later on when we get the whole thing going the way we want. So inside the feeder there's just 2 big paddles that go round and round, and then inside the drum of the feeder of the wagon is all knives. So it pushes basically the straw or the silage across the knives, and also it's doing that, it's constantly cutting. Before, with it all being pedigree Herefords, basically it's all silage, all grass, very little meal, and all the calves will be brought through on a very different system. So we're relying on the mummy to bring the calf through to weaning, and then from weaning on, really, it was minimal concentrates and just normal grass-based system. Whereas now with the calves and the dairy operation, they're going to have to be fed in different ways. So that was the whole purpose of getting this machine and getting into the way of working out rations for those calves to bring them through their stages of development and to get the best sort of results from them. Now, beef is difficult as a whole, and I think it's very hard to be effective and efficient to a level that it would need to be to make a profit, because the margins are always very fine, even if you're at the top end of the scale. But there's no way that you can actually be effective in the beef side unless you've got a system and a process and a way of working. So we have got the weigh scale. Now we're going to be much more focused on weighing as we're bringing the calves through, to know what the right time is to bring them on to the next stage of feed and when the right time is to get them out the door. Oh, you enjoy the challenge. It's like anything else. Everything that you're trying to do, you're trying to see your performance of your animal and you're trying to see how you make it better. There's the profitability in it, but if you can get that right, you make that better. If you can get it right, you actually do the carbon footprint better as well, because the better way that you can bring the animal to convert it, what's there, to protein and to beef in the best, the quickest way, then you've probably got the best result. So you're lowering the time period that you're producing methane or whatever. So it all adds up on all ends to be more efficient, really.
Near Tempo in Fermanagh, young couple Margaret and Andrew Little have a dairy herd. With morning milking done, Andrew is busy cleaning and feeding his cows.
We are situated here in Tempo, wee village of Tempo, County Fermanagh. We're only 10 minutes from Enniskillen. The farm with 64 acres here owned, and then we're renting another 100 acres between Tempo and Maguire's Bridge. It's fairly heavy ground around here, heavy clay, a lot of moss. We would kick the cows out to grass. 20th April is sort of our date nearly. We always seem to hit 20th April as our date for kicking cows out to grass. We try and keep them all out during the day. Very rarely let them out at night. We're having enough land around the house to carry our cows here. We've upwards of 100 cows here, so it takes quite a bit of ground to go day and night. It's a lot simpler at night because it's handy, because open the door at the back of the parlour they're in, it's handy in the morning, and I can never finish milking. Me or Margaret will just change the fencer that night for the next morning. So management, it's a lot better. We cut our grass 3 times a year, and we let the cows out during the day, in at night, and we try and keep them out into October as long as possible.
Up until this time last year, I was nursing full time and then farming on all my days off. And then I took a career break last year whenever Andrew broke his leg to help out Raymond on the farm, because it was too much for one person to do on their own. And then after that, I decided that I just was going to be at home farming. So Andrew built a shed, and they didn't know what they were going to put in it or whatever. So I was like, well, you know, we'll put it in and we'll rear calves in it. And the easier it is to rear a calf, the better you'll do it. So we've got a fridge and a freezer, medicine cabinets in here. I put in a sink, put in a washing machine to wash the cosy calf jackets, because again, you either have to sneak in past Andrew's mummy to put it in her washing machine or bring it down to our house to put it in our washing machine. And it's just hassle. Whereas you know, the washing machine's just there, you just bung it in and then turn it on, away you go. So it's just making things that wee bit handier. I really care about our Frisian heifers, obviously, because they're going to be the future of our herd. And like, we want to rear good, strong calves, you know, good, strong beef calves. Because ultimately, do you know what I mean, you're talking your bottom line, and if you have reared good calves, they'll sell for a better price, and no one wants to buy a calf that doesn't look that well, and no one wants to sell a calf that's not going right or anything, so.
Like all animals, the calves need constant care and attention.
Just checking to see if the calf's ear was warm and if its nose was warm. So if it's a cow's ear is cold or if its nose is cold, it could be dehydration or maybe even a temperature. So normally them two things sometimes runs hand in hand. If the calf isn't scared, it's probably a wee touch of early stage pneumonia. And if the calf was scared, I'll be looking at dehydration and I treat the calf for scour. So it's not ideal weather, because 1 minute it's really cold at night and the next minute it's very warm. And that fluctuation of temperature doesn't help there in the atmosphere and the humidity for the calves.
Along with the dairy cows, Margaret has her own special Simmental cattle.
So this wee one over here is Heidi, and this is her mummy here at the end, Isa, and then this is Katie and her mummy Hattie. I decided whenever I got married that I wanted to show cattle, so I told Andrew I wanted to show cattle, and he was like, that's fine. We picked a Simmental because he said they were quite a quiet breed, and we've had them ever since. So this year I hope to show Ivy here, and maybe Busby as well.